perhaps what was the game of the year is what some people are calling it, the Minnesota Vikings and the Buffalo Bills. And certainly it lived up to all of those pregame titles. And there are a lot of really good NFL games that have taken place this past season. Obviously, you've had the Miami Dolphins and the Baltimore Ravens, the Chiefs versus the Chargers, the Chiefs versus the Bills. But there's no question that to this point in the NFL season, the Bills and the Vikings has been the best NFL game played so far. And obviously, both teams came in with two of the better records in the NFL. The Vikings were 7-1. The Bills were 6-2. A pretty big game for Buffalo, just trying to keep pace with Kansas City and staying atop the AFC rankings. And even within their own division, the AFC East, Miami was winning and steamrolling earlier today or yesterday. So this was an important game for both sides. The Vikings trying to prove to people that they're not an afterthought, that they are a legitimate team in the NFC, that they haven't just been coasting because of an easier schedule. This was a big game for Minnesota to say, not only to the league, but to themselves, we are legitimate contenders and we are a legitimate team that can go deep into the playoffs. So there was a lot at stake. And this was a really special and a magical game to me. And because it had everything that was written on it was Bills are going to win this game. It had a Bills win written all over it, except it simply didn't. It simply did not happen. The Bills led by 17, 27-10, with 2 minutes left in the third quarter at home at Orchard Park. Snowflakes were falling down. Everything was leaning in Buffalo's direction. And it's interesting because when you think about Minnesota and the Vikings in particular, they play inside. So despite how cold the state of Minnesota is, and I can tell you it is absolutely freezing, arguably the coldest state in the United States, maybe North Dakota's got something extra to say about that. I went to school in Wisconsin, and Minnesota was even colder than that, yet they play inside a dome. So playing in the outdoor elements isn't necessarily something that they're accustomed to, and yet they went to Orchard Park down by 17 with Josh Allen on the other side, with Stephon Diggs, with that potent offense, and they stymied them in the second half, and they delivered clutch play after clutch play. So I do think that you have to give Minnesota a ton of credit. Now they're 8-1. Second best record in the NFL behind the 8-0 Eagles, again, who play tonight. Kevin O'Connell, first-year head coach, the former offensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams. Clearly, he's coaching this team really well. This is a Minnesota Vikings team that was always losing every single close one-score game from a season ago. Now, all of a sudden, they're winning all these games. Obviously, part of it is being a little bit fortuitous, but at the same time, a lot of it's coaching, a lot of it's execution in the last couple of minutes on key drives, on key plays. And O'Connell clearly is having a command over the offense, over the defense. Obviously, Dalvin Cook, it helps when he's running the ball effectively. 119 yards, including that 81-yard rushing touchdown to kind of break open the momentum. Again, the Vikings were dead in the water. The Vikings were simply dead in the water. They appeared lifeless. And despite surviving kind of an exorcist ripping the life out of them, they still managed to, hire a taxidermist and make it seem like they were alive again and just patching things together and sewing parts of them back together in that second half. Somehow that all happened. So you've got Dalvin Cook running the ball effectively. Justin Jefferson had a career day, not only in terms of career yards, which I'll touch on in my Malkins moments, 193 receiving yards, a career high for him, but the most impressive catch of his career, one of the most impressive catches in NFL history, And I don't think it's completely hyperbolic to say that. Obviously, it was a regular season game, but on 4th and 18, this is the game. If the Vikings don't collect a first down on 4th and 18, they lose the game. And Kirk Cousins throws a 32-yard pass that to any other wide receivers probably picked off. And instead, he goes OBJ and reaches back for it and actually somehow hauls it in with one hand through the arms of the defensive back. I don't remember the DB at the moment, but somehow hauls it in with one hand, reaching back, brings it to the ground, controls it with one hand the entire way on 4th and 18 for the game. It doesn't get any clutcher than that. It really was similar to Odell Beckham Jr.'s catch. OBJ, the difference is he had to reach back farther than Justin Jefferson, but he also wasn't having to reach through two hands of a defensive back. So it was an incredible, incredible catch. Obviously, Kirk Cousins had to deliver on some big third down throws. That was a fourth down throw, but I give credit again to Justin Jefferson as opposed to Kirk Cousins for that play. And again, the Bills were just dominant in the first half. Everything was leaning their way. It was teetering that way in the second half. And they just had a difficult time putting away the Vikings. And the defense stepped up, especially in the second half. They were getting pressure on Josh Allen. They forced 2 interceptions. They forced 2 fumbles. They sacked him twice. And of course, the fateful play for Buffalo after Minnesota Vikings, their turnover on downs at the 1. Right? The Bills defense comes up, force the turnover on downs. Vikings, you would think the game is over. They don't have any more timeouts left. There's a minute left in the game. And Josh Allen and the offense, all they have to do is create enough space to take 2 knees. And the Minnesota Vikings defensive line gets a good initial interior push. They force a fumble of Allen in the end zone. They pounce on it, and they score a touchdown, then force the Bills to have to come the other way to score a field goal to send it into OT. So the defense came up with stop after stop. They picked off Allen in the end zone in overtime on the Bills' potential game-winning drive to seal it. So the Vikings defense and the Vikings team, don't get me wrong, they made a number of winning plays. But I still think that if you had to ask the question, was this more impressive by the Vikings or disappointment with the Bills? To me, it's still more disappointment with the Bills because, again, this was a game that the Bills should have won. You can't put yourself in any better of a situation. And I know that Josh Allen was playing compromised, sense that he had a compromised elbow. There were questions and skepticism surrounding whether or not he would even play in this game. The team was very reticent to even throw him out there. All the media pundits were suggesting, hey, rest him. Your Super Bowl hopes hinge on his health. And I give him credit because he just wants to play every single game he can. He's an absolute fighter. He wants to be in the foxhole with his team. And while he played extremely well in the first half, I think it therefore makes it permissible to criticize him for his performance in the second half. He just didn't really play well in the second half. 2 costly interceptions, now leads the NFL for the most picks with 10. And even he, if you watch him, he's always visibly frustrated after those picks because he knows, man, wish I could have had that one back. Obviously, the one in the end zone is how it all culminated. But even prior to that, he had put his team in some difficult positions, always going for big home run hitting plays versus taking small checkdowns. And it's still a problem that the Bills rely on him way too much to run the football. Yes, he is an effective runner with the football. I understand that. But especially when he's playing with a compromised elbow, to ask the man, and oftentimes the Bills don't even ask him, just Josh Allen feels compelled to have to run a ton and make those plays and leave it all out for his team and give up his body, as great as all of those characteristics, those traits, those plays are for him, it's not the recipe for success to win the Super Bowl for me. They're still an incredible team. They're still a very good team. Again, the Bills defense played well enough to win that game. They sacked Kirk Cousins 4 times, 2 picks. They did what they needed to do. They got that stop with a minute left. Allen and the offense sputtered, and they came up short. Now, the only good news for Buffalo is they just exited their most difficult stretch of the season as far as their schedule is concerned. It starts to lighten up a little bit for the back half of the season. So, again, this was a team that started out the year brimming with confidence. They played with a chip on their shoulder. And that changed a couple of weeks ago. Once they won at Kansas City, they have now transitioned into a much more arrogant and a much more entitled team. And I like confident teams, but I also think it's important to be able to play kind of lowering those expectations at times, not feeling like you've achieved when you haven't actually accomplished those things yet. And as you look at the standings, who's the first place team in the AFC today? It's the Kansas City Chiefs. Haven't we seen that before?